So this morning I decided that I'm going to do a video on the way my mother used to make stew. And there was a step, I mean, a lot of people who cook at home do know how to make stew, but there's a step that I'm going to be using that I don't see many people use. And I remember reading years and years ago that it was a step that was unnecessary. But because my mom's stew tasted so good, I'm gonna include that step in the process of making stew. I went ahead and I pre-cut all the meat. In the past I made the pieces smaller because my kids didn't like big chunks of meat, but today I've made them maybe about an inch and a half. They're in cubes. Some of them were already smaller, but I went ahead and cut the larger ones a little bit smaller, so that basically just to make things cook evenly. So I was telling Atticus, I'm trying to go back into my memory, my long past memory, watching my mom do things, and I can't fully remember the exact process of how she did the spices, but the step that I'm talking about is called dredging. And by the way, I'm doing this in the morning. I'm a little bit behind. I need to feed my dogs and I need to get out to take care of the chickens. But what Atticus is going to be streaming today, and I want this stew to cook all day long, and then when he's done, then we can have our meal together in the evening. By using my crock pot, which is over there, and it's that old rival one that I have. But anyway, so I'm going to just take a shot in the dark, and I wasn't sure in the dredging process if I put the spices in with the flour or onto the meat and then the flour. So now I need to make an executive decision. I'm thinking I am going to do I am going to first show you that I'm going to take a bag, and you can use a Ziploc. In fact, that's probably a better idea. But since I already have this bag, just a plastic bag, we buy them in the little boxes that you can get at Walmart. And I've taken about a cup of flour, and I'm going to put it in the bag. And what dredging is covering meat with flour. And again, this is where I'm stuck, and I don't like making mistakes. So I'm gonna put the spices in with the flour. I'm gonna put in probably. I'm gonna put it in a bowl first so I can look at it. Maybe a half a teaspoon of flour. Let me see how. Sorry, garlic powder. And I was using Trader Joe's garlic powder, and it's the I know there's different types. It's actual powder. Sometimes they're granulated. I'm not using the granulated kind. So I put in about a half a teaspoon. Smell test. I'm going to add a little more. Maybe another quarter teaspoon. Does that make 3/4 of a teaspoon? Okay. Oh, that smells good. Smell test. And then I'm going to take some black powder. This time I'm using Watkins instead of the ground kind that you grind. I'm going to put it in my bowl just so I can see the amount. About a half a teaspoon of black powder. Black powder. Now, black pepper. Otherwise there'll be some explosion. I'm going to add a little more. You know, like sprinkles, like I mentioned, if you can see it. I can see it. It's evenly dispersed. Cooking, I used to be really super exact science about, and then later on I learned to test more, and eyeball things more, and I think a lot of cooks do that now. But I can see the black pepper as it's dispersed around there. Salt is another thing, though. I have a tendency to undersalt, and then I end up having to add salt. So I'm doing about the same basic amount, maybe half a teaspoon of salt. And I'm mixing it all together. So this is the dredging part. Oops. I have a cast iron pan on the stove heating, and I can smell that I can smell the oil cooking. So here's the dredging part. You're going to put, not the whole thing, but parts of the meat. I've just now taken about a third. I believe I have 2 pounds here, and this came from a butcher shop at Whole Foods. They have different steps to their meat in categories of the food that they eat and the humane way that they're being treated. But I don't remember what kind, but I'm certain that it's grass-fed meat. So I went ahead and did about a third of the meat, and the dredging part is just simply making sure that they all get covered with flour. Now I'm going to take them out of the bag. I'll lay them on my board, and I'm going to do the rest of the meat using the same process of just look at, they're actually kind of pretty. Look like they're covered in snow. Like snowball cookies. I have a really good recipe for that. And I can't remember, I was looking through my recipe book. I have it where it says snowball cookies, and then I have something called Scotty's mothballs. I don't know if it's the same thing. I didn't take the time to read it. But here's another third. I can also remember my mom used garlic salt quite a bit. I find that it's more salty than garlicky, and I prefer separating the two. But when she made garlic toast, and we actually used sandwich bread to make garlic bread, she would use butter on the bread and then sprinkle it with garlic salt, and it was really, really good. So this is the last part of the meat that I have that I'm going to be dredging. Okay, so here the meat is all covered in snow, and for the flour and the spices, and I'm going to take it over to where my pan is. I still learn to keep my handles in, because a long time ago, for the safety of my kids, my children, I always cook with the handles in so that no small child can accidentally pull a hot pan down on themselves. So I'm using Trader Joe's canola oil right here. I date everything. This is what my mom used to do, but I date everything to make sure that it stays fresh. Unfortunately, sometimes I forget, and I'll date my Tupperware with Scotch tape, and then sometimes I forget to take it off, and that's not good. So, but all of my bottles and cans, I just date them so I know that they're fresh. It's hard for me to read the expiry date. So the way I always tested, it's probably not safe, to see if the oil is ready is I sprinkle a little water and I hear it sizzle. So it sounds like it's ready. And then I'm going to place the meat. This is scary for me. I've gotten burned a lot by grease. A little splatter. So this is the part that I read a long time ago, or I saw on Food Network or something, whatever it was, that dredging is not necessary. But again, you know what? And I stopped because all the experts know. You know what? The old timers knew better. And my mom's food was just so good, so I'm not gonna do that. And I'm going back to the way she did it, based on my memory. And when I was a young wife in my early 20s, this is the way I did it. I'm afraid my pan is not going to be big enough. Because, well, this is my biggest cast iron pan that I have. I really can't handle much bigger than that. This is a 10-inch. I know that there's a 12. I even recently got something from Lodge that's a stainless steel pan that I might have been able to use. I didn't realize that I had this much meat. I should know better. You didn't see that. I just washed the top of my stove, so we're safe. I honestly did. So I'm gonna let these brown with the flour coating, and then we'll come back and I'll let you see what it looks like. But you just basically get yourself a pair of tongs and then flip them over as they cook. You don't want to cook the meat. You just want to brown the sides. So that's what I'm waiting for. And I'll come back. Okay, so I finished browning the meat, and I do admit that I think I might have doubled the oil in the pan, and it could have used less oil. But basically, you want to get it more like that. But the rest of it is brown. And again, like I said, I know I'm going to make a mistake, so now I know the next time to use a little bit less oil. And I think it should have been like at a searing heat. So you're learning my mistakes with me, and I won't repeat it again. But so a little bit higher heat. Oh, a bird just hit a window. Oh, I hate when they do that. Searing heat, and then brown it, watching it, and then I put it in the rival crock. Can I talk? Okay, you can. I put it in my rival crock pot, and I'm going to wait, and then I'm going to put together my vegetables and show you what it is that I'm going to put inside of the stew meat, which is probably just basic, but I'll show you what it is that my mother used to do. So I'm going to cover this up. I'm actually needing to feed my dogs and my chickens, so I'm going to let this cool down just a little bit and prepare my vegetables, and then I'll be back. So it's pretty darn cold here today, and windy, and wind makes cold colder. It's that wind chill factor. So I got everybody taken care of, took care of the dogs and the cats and the chickens are outside. Everybody's fed. They were cleaned. Their coop is clean and whatever in my daily chores. But I finally got back, and I went ahead and prepared the vegetables in advance. So what was typical of my mom's menu, or her recipe with the vegetables, is she would have chopped onions, and I used a sweet brown onion, and then potatoes, and you can use whatever potatoes that you prefer, but I just like good old-fashioned russet potatoes. And then we had celery in our stews. I happen to like celery. Atticus is not a fan, but I always have been. And then I was lucky enough to, I have quite a big basket of carrots outside, and I was able to cut up quite a few of them. They're kind of I can't remember the name of it. They're not Nantes, I don't believe, but the name of the carrot that I planted in my little victory garden, they came out kind of stubby, like this. And there were a few that were a little bit longer than that, but the majority of them were about this size and stubby. And then you get the alien-looking ones, like this. I decided just not to include this one because it's just hard to cut. But my mom always used a peeler and peeled all the peels off of everything. Now, I did take the peels off of the potatoes, but I didn't take the peels off of the carrots. And the carrots are homegrown, and hopefully they have the vitamins in there. I do that in the skin, which you don't want to remove. I'm a big fan of carrots, and I happen to probably put in more than what most people would in their stew, and so that kind of makes your stew lean on the sweet side. That includes soups as well, but I like it, and they're just pretty. And I don't know of any other vegetables to add to my stew. I think I've tried other things. Everything else seems to be soft, a soft vegetable to put in a stew. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add that in right now to the meat. All the vegetables. And they'll cook down. You know, I think I measured out just about the right amount of vegetables. And then I'm going to stir it up with the meat. So everything's all nice and big and chunky. And it's my intention, and what I've always done, especially in the last couple of years, is because it's only Atticus and I, what I'll do is when I'm done cooking, we'll have our meal, and then I'll end up probably making a couple of other meals to be put in the freezer for the future. There's a lot of days that, because of my neurological issues, I'm not able to function, and that's when it's good to have something in the freezer that's already pre-made. So I'll do spaghetti sauces and chilies and soups, and now this stew. We haven't had stew in a long time, but the weather is just so right for it because of the cold. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get another ingredient. So this one other ingredient that I want to put in is tomato sauce. Now usually I have a size that's half this, and this size, and I don't have my glasses on. This size is a 15-ounce size of tomato sauce, and I'm going to use probably about half of it, because usually I only use one smaller can, and then it would probably be about 7.5 or 8 ounces. One of the things that I wanted to take note of is because of COVID and there's so much of the online shopping going on, I do shop at Walmart for a lot of the things, especially canned goods, but I have complained numerous times to them that their packers are either not being careful or not noticing that the box is fine when things are delivered, but the stuff inside is damaged. And so I'm getting a lot of cans that are dented, and this is a minor dent. You never ever want to keep, you were never supposed to even buy dented cans, because where it's dented, it becomes a thinner metal, and that's when bacteria can enter into the can. So you don't want to get dented cans. And so I complained, and the last time I complained, then my cans have been coming kind of extra packed, thankfully. So as far as the tomato sauce goes, I'm going to open it in the old-fashioned way that my mom would do. with several different things that were just liquid. Instead of opening it up with a can opener, I use a bottle opener. And then I'm going to pour roughly half the can, because I'm going to feel it. Into my stew and get my spoon back out. I don't know about you, but there's a satisfying sound when you're mixing something gushy. So everything is coated in the tomato sauce. So I'm happy with that. I don't want it to be too tomatoey. It's going to be like some sort of pasta dish tomatoey sauce. I'm going to put the lid on. And then I'm going to put it on low. Now it's roughly early afternoon, just about noonish, and it'll take a few hours to cook. I most likely, when it gets closer to dinner time, put it up towards high, maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours before. So if I'm calculating, I'm calculating having dinner probably at 7. So I'm going to keep an eye on how this is cooking and in the meanwhile. So that's my mom's stew, and then when it's all finished, I'll show you what the end result is. Okay? So FYI, I actually used that whole 15-ounce can of tomato sauce because it looked too dry several hours ago. And it is almost 7 o'clock like I predicted, and everything is tender, including meat. And Atticus is done. Wait, I saw celery. Atticus is done with his streaming. Yeah, that's good. It's time to dish it out. I already turned it off. And we had a delivery of some Whole Foods rustic sourdough bread and some real butter, and we're set. So my mom's crock-pot stew.